So we come to the third part of our talk with Chris Robertshaw, representing the group. Is it a pressure group? Was it an advisory group? I'm not sure how. FutureIOM.
Advisory, I suppose.
Advisory.
Yeah.
Lots of feedback again from last week?
Yes, good. The conversations continue. I'm meeting various people for coffee, and there'll be obviously a bit of a slowdown during the summer period, but hopefully we've laid the foundations of this, how can I put it, way of thinking, and then pick it up in the autumn again. Right.
I mean, there's definitely groups coming forward. I've seen some proposals. I suppose the whole thing here is going to be that they all are going to promise everyone what everyone wants, which is a good health service, low tax rates, but a high standard of living. It's almost impossible to do it, isn't it? I mean, whoever comes up with this thing, you've got to balance your books, haven't you?
They're all absolutely right to aspire to those things, but on the present trajectory, those aspirations are impossible because of the fact that we're living way beyond our means. And this initiative, this Future Isle of Man concept, is designed to address things at a very fundamental basis or level, such that those sort of aspirations and desires can be achieved. Right now, they cannot be. But so if we can go through to the third part.
What's the third part going to be called?
Yeah, the third part's about high-level strategy and high-level major projects. It's those two together. Okay. And it follows, week before last it was loss of democracy, last week was bloated government, and this is about strategy. But what I hope people appreciate from what I'm saying, and if they don't, then I've sort of failed to get the message across, so it's my fault. But these three things are intimately interrelated. So if I can kick off.
Off you go.
Fine, thanks. What I'd like to do is start with the concept of major projects and how there's been so many failures, and then go on to strategy and then link it to other things. But we've had a consistent, remorseless process of major projects through the DOI failing, and I've just quickly list the threy big ones that come to mind. There was the harbour strategy, where DOI went to Tynwald and did not tell the members of Tynwald the full facts and the truth, and effectively misled Tynwald in order to get that £80 million expenditure through. And when the truth came out later on, that project, that master plan died. Then, of course, you've got the massive failures of the Liverpool passenger terminal, which started around about 29 million and is now somewhere north of 100 million. But even now, I don't think we know the final cost. And then, of course, and I won't touch on the detail of it because it would be wrong, but there's currently a court case with regard to, I think it's Sondika and the Lord Street project. We need to sort of broaden out from that and recognise the fact that I think this was the third attempt made by the DOI to bring about a project there, and each one was a major failure. Put all those three together, and you just wonder why it is that they haven't been analysed in huge depth as to why these things keep happening. And the fault lies not with the civil service, but with the political body, who appear to just try to find ways of burying these sort of failures rather than address them and say, what is the problem? And I put to you now that the problem is very straightforward, that our governmental system puts too much emphasis and requires too much from each of the departments concerned, and DOI in particular. And goodness me, how often have we heard from politicians, well, we've got to do something about DOI, but we never do anything, and the whole thing just blunders on remorselessly. So the issue here is that it's incumbent upon the political body to address this issue and say, what is it that we must do? And forgive me, but I've been saying for years what must be done. and that is that we need to simplify the departments and get them much more focused on operational delivery and give them a chance to do their jobs properly. Meanwhile, the big, and here we come on to strategic issues, the high-level strategic issues and the big capital project work, which is beyond the departments to deal with in isolation in their silos. These have to be dealt with in a different way. And that different way is for the political body to have really high quality advice outside of and beyond the departments. Sadly, as each new house comes in and the ministers are appointed and the members are appointed, they very quickly sort of fall into or drown in the system and fail to realise that the system they're trying to operate is faulty and expensive. Result of which is we're now living way, way beyond our means, and all these aspirations that you've said just at the beginning of this interview, where people are saying, well, I want this and I believe in that, and they're quite right to do so, but we can't afford it. So if we want a future, and that's the name of this pressure group, if you like, we have got to get to grips with the nature of our structure. And the only way to do it is effectively to go to a unified government where the independent, and they are, almost fully independent departments are brought into a single organisation. We keep the ministers, we keep the departments, but we ask less of them and they expect much higher standards and make sure that their operating duties are their, first and foremost, their absolute, totally focused on these issues, such that they can be held accountable for those duties. So how do you deal then? How do the politicians deal with the issue of where do they get the advice from and what?
And accountability. That's a big word. No one seems ever to stand up and be named and shamed, do they? When things go wrong, accountability seems very
well. Yes, there's a very clumsy and poor form of accountability, and let's link let's back to the DOI. All these awful errors that have been made. The easy way out on this one is to either blame the CEO or blame the minister, and we've seen endless ministers turn over, and somehow we're looking for that magical minister who can make a faulty system work. Well, it's not going to happen. We have to change the system.
Yeah, but there are poison chalices here. Health, DOI. There's maybe a couple more that always come up that seem to be leading the argument for change, should we put it?
Well, yes, but the system itself is distorted, which is why they're poisonous challenges. DOI shouldn't be a poisonous challenge. It should be an honour, a privilege to be a minister of that department, but it is in an impossible position because far too much is expected of it. Yeah. If you look at those, for example, if you look at those three projects we've just discussed there, they're all entirely different projects. And it's not possible for an organisation, an individual department, to hold that level of competence in all those areas at the same time. It's just simply not possible.
Are we unfair on the DOI, for instance, who always seem to...
Oh, absolutely. We're unfair on the civil service, we're unfair on the departmental heads, we're actually unfair on the minister in that particular moment. But Tynwald, because it's almost abrogated responsibility for its roles by passing everything down to the departments and then blaming the departments when things go wrong. If you think about that, that's bonkers. The result of that is that in their own defence, the departments try to, as it were, embrace the responsibilities that they shouldn't actually have in the first place and deal with it from the perspective of the mindset of that particular department, which undermines the authority of Tynwald. And the result of that is we start to lose our democracy. And people increasingly say, well, why on earth is this happening and what are our politicians doing about it? Well, right now, nothing, because they're failing to refine the system so that the political process gets the level of high quality advice out with the departments that it needs.
What choices do you get? I mean, using your example, when you were a minister, you go in there, you clearly will see people you can work with and others maybe you can't work with, and you'll get feedback that these people are just not doing their job and they're just in for the long thing, but they've got their job. Could you, even when you're doing this, have the ability to remove those people from those jobs?
Well,
or is it because civil service is so tight, they can't be moved, or they'll be moved to a new position that's still getting their paycheck?
Well, I did. I mean, I think you and I have had conversations about this, and I did actually change the heads in one of the departments I was in, but that wouldn't answer this issue.
No,
because I've just said to you that changing the CEOs, that was for a different reason.
Yes.
Changing the CEOs and changing the ministers doesn't change anything. It actually perpetuates the continuation of a faulty system.
Well, how do you fix it then? I mean, if you're saying that, I mean, that's the people in charge. If you can't get them altered, they just get their mindset changed, what can you do?
Well, unless we change mindset, we're heading for deep trouble.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no doubt about that. And I reiterate an argument I've been making now since, well, over 10 years now, I think. Yes, it's 10 years. That you have to make government a unified single organisation. You then have to apply responsibilities to departments which is appropriate for them on an operating basis to embrace and be fully accountable for them, both the civil service and the minister to be fully accountable for those duties and their delivery. But that the high level advice that the political pro-Tynwald needs sits above that. I'm going to simplify this in a very crude form, in the sense that there should be a very flexible think tank sitting, as it were, above the political process. And
who are these, MHKs or people?
No, not at all.
No,
MHKs.
so these are professionals that are given that job to do.
Yes, invited in, depending on what the task is, and when that task is over, they then retire from that process. And it doesn't. I mean, it's a particular project in a particular set of circumstances. So government should assemble a really high quality team.
It's going to cost money.
Yes, it will. But look what it saves. It saves everything.
Are these people hiring and firing in departments as well, or to organise?
No, they don't sit in the departments. They sit. Hang on, they sit above the departments and they advise.
A new tier of bureaucracy, then?
No, it's not bureaucracy at all, because they're not bureaucrats. They're advisors who come in. It's a form of consultation, but not a single organisation. It's an assembly of individuals who, for good reason, have endured or subject to high respect for their opinions and competencies.
And who picks these people?
That's the essence of the challenge, which there should be a very small secretariat at the centre of government, which becomes incredibly competent in going out finding the people. I mean, there are great people on the Isle of Man who could give really good advice to the government and who are just ignored. And why are they ignored? They're ignored because the only way in for the advice that they're trying to give is through departments. So they're trying to feed in high quality strategic advice from bottom up, and it doesn't work. And what surprises me is this is such an obvious fault. I can't understand why we just keep blundering on the way we are. So if we went the route I thoroughly encourage people to adopt in the next House, then they have a chance of delivering the things they want. They genuinely and sincerely want to deliver for the electorate.
So you've got all these ideas, FutureIOM. Are you putting these to these different groups and to different individuals even to say this is what you should put in your manifesto? Yes. Sort of thing to put it before the public so they can vote on your issues? Not dealing with, but expressing these views to the public will intensify once we get into the winter. I have spoken to a number of individuals, but I've also spoken to those mindful of forming political parties, and I'm saying to them, look guys, you crack on with the policies that are important for you, but please understand that the organisation you hope to be part of, the political bureaucratic process, is itself faulty and needs amendment. Why is it, for example, that we've been saying, well, DOI is not fit for purpose and have done nothing about it for years and years? So DOI blunders on. No, but seriously, how many times have you talked about this? It's untouchable, it appears. That's how I've heard from people who work in the DOI about their management, and it's not good news because they are literally, I think they're so shell shocked and they're entrenched because they're getting hit by everyone in all directions. They just are. They're pretty ruthless. Let's put it that way. I mean, they can't even move them from where they. I mean, how have done this one? Yeah, where they sit in the sea turtle, those beautiful mirrored windows, so no one can see in what they're doing. They were told by numerous heads they were going to be moved. They haven't. They're staying there. I mean, that's just a similar thing.
But what this has built up is extreme defensiveness on the part of the civil service.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, they won't necessarily admit it that their duties and responsibilities are above that which they're actually able to deliver. But what progressively has happened is that the civil service have developed a contempt for the political process. You're going to engender a contempt if an organisation is expecting things of you that you can't do. And the politicians, as I say, they get elected, they go in, they get allocated responsibilities and get sucked into the system. So the existing departments, as they stand, do their best to defend their particular circumstances, and people outside, the people who voted them in, very quickly come to the conclusion, well, what on earth's going on? So, I've sort of opened the book on this as best I can, these three fundamental things, and, so and hope that as we go into next winter, we can really pick up on these things and really exercise them. But I think I've just shown, perhaps clumsily, that the loss of democracy and the bloated state of the departments and the inability to find and establish high-quality strategic thinking and management of expensive major projects are all intimately linked. Because if you adjust it, it's only a question of refinement. If you refine the government along the lines I'm asking it to do, and as Sir Jonathan Elvidge has stated in 2014, and we discussed it at the last meeting, that it was urgent that it happened from a strategic perspective, and here we are 11 years later and we've done nothing. I don't know what it is about our politicians that they won't grasp this nettle and deal with it, because if they don't, we will continue, as the Treasury are forecasting, continued overspending right the way through to the point that we destroy the future of a wonderful island and the future of our children and grandchildren.
I think there's a massive problem with any elections is people don't want to hear the truth. They don't want to hear we can't afford this and we can't afford that. They want to hear the promises, which normally are unmanageable, not thought through, and certainly not costed for in many, many cases. And that's just the way of the world. People want to vote for somebody that's going to promise them the world and more.
There's nothing wrong with the promises that aspiring candidates want to offer the people who will elect them, for good reason, that they're perfectly sound and sensible aspirations. What they need to understand is that unless they fix the underlying faults in the system, then they will never get those promises delivered. And the cycle goes on and on and on from one general election to the next until we go bust. Yeah. And that's where we're heading at the moment. And there's got to be an honest understanding. But we're destroying the future for our grandchildren. I'm appalled by that.
Okay, you done on this?
Yeah.
I mean, just thinking about the budget, every year, the way the budget's done and how it's handled, it's always been criticised that you have to vote almost for the whole thing. It's very unwieldy. Do you think that's half the problem? That there's this huge budget that they vote for. Normally, calling on reserves to be needed, even if they don't say at the time, because we know the NHS will need drawing on reserves every year almost without fail.
Well,
you
can't control it through that particular route. That won't solve the problem that I've just described at all. But it goes further than the budget now, because Treasury itself is part of the problem, as it's led by Alex Allison, in the sense that he, as I've said before, he's gaslighting the public, pretending that all these extra costs are all about delivering better health for you, when in fact the whole structure of government is bloated, and he's not telling the truth, and I'm appalled.
In your opinion, let me just once again, he didn't respond, but if Alex wants to come on the show, I'd love to hear from him. But
look, how many times, Paul, have we heard government ministers saying, well, we've got to cut our costs, and they declare it's going to be 10 million here or 20 million there or whatever. What do they actually do? Nothing. It just blunders on. And it blunders on because they're not grasping the essence of this, that they've got to refine the way the departments work, and they've got to ensure that the advice that they're getting is of the highest possible standard. Even for example, when they're forming I don't know what it's called, the current regime's, current administration's plan for the Isle of Man. Where did that information come from? It either came from the individual desires of newly elected members, or it came from the departments. You don't hear them talking about, well, we need to, at the core of all this, we need to refine the way government works so that it becomes cost effective, and we can afford the things that we all desperately want to see continued. It doesn't happen. So
much more we could talk about, but I think we'll leave it there on this one. We'll put up your details again on the screen.
Yes, please do.
And you're getting the calls? You're getting people emailing you?
Yeah, I've got a meeting tomorrow morning.
Good. And as I said, we're pretty close to getting some people coming forward, I think, with these new potential parties. So we are very interested to hear from them. And the countdown's on, isn't it, really? It's September next year, so.
Well, I mean, I've come in...
Definitely.
Excuse me, I've come in this early because the issue I'm trying to get through to people isn't that obvious, as you've said, to the electorate, who quite rightly want to vote for people who want to do the things that most people want to see happen. Just leave this point with them, that if they want these things to happen for the greater good of the Isle of Man, we have to now refine the way our government works.
Some pain for some gain later?
Don't think it is pain necessarily at all. If we act now, if we leave it another cycle, another 5 years, we're getting close to too late, and then it really is painful.